Can you spare $5? He handed over his last dollar without a second thought. But what he didn't know was the woman he helped wasn't homeless at all. She was a Fortune 500 CEO, and that tiny act of kindness was about to change his entire life. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The first rays of dawn hadn't yet touched the horizon when Nathan Cole's alarm buzzed softly beside his bed. He reached over and silenced it quickly, not wanting to wake Emma in the next room. The thin walls of their trailer home carried every sound, and his daughter needed her rest. Nathan's joints creaked as he sat up, reminding him of the long hours he'd spent under cars yesterday. The bedroom floor was cold against his feet. The heating system was acting up again, but parts cost money they didn't have. He pulled on his work clothes in the dark, the familiar texture of his worn blue uniform offering little warmth. In the kitchen, Nathan moved with practiced quiet, pulling out the pancake mix and their last egg. The crack in the kitchen window whistled with the morning wind, and he made a mental note to try patching it with some leftover weather stripping from work. A stack of bills on the counter caught his eye, each envelope marked with red final notice stamps that seemed to glow in the dim light. "Not now," he whispered to himself, turning instead to the task of breakfast. The mixing bowl had a chip in it, but it was still Emma's favorite, decorated with faded yellow daisies that somehow kept their cheerful spirit despite years of use. As he stirred the batter, Nathan heard the soft padding of feet down the hallway. Emma appeared in her purple pajamas, her brown hair tousled from sleep, clutching the stuffed rabbit her mother had given her years ago. "Morning, sunshine," Nathan said, managing a warm smile despite his worries. "You're up early." Emma rubbed her eyes. "I smelled pancakes." "Well, your nose doesn't lie. Want to help me make them extra special?" She nodded eagerly, pulling her step stool over to the counter. Together, they added a sprinkle of cinnamon, their secret ingredient that made even the cheapest pancake mix taste like heaven. The old electric griddle took longer to heat up these days, but Nathan had learned its quirks. While they waited, Emma chattered about her upcoming day at school. "It's Kindness Week, Daddy," she announced, her face bright with excitement. "Mrs. Thompson says we're going to do something nice for someone every day." "Is that right?" Nathan flipped a pancake with expert care. "And what kind thing are you planning to do today?" Emma's face scrunched in thought. "I drew a picture for Tommy because he was sad yesterday. His dog ran away." She paused, then added softly, "I told him sometimes angels borrow our dogs for a while, like Mommy borrowed our cat." Nathan's throat tightened. Even after 2 years, Emma's simple wisdom about loss could still catch him off guard. He focused on sliding the perfectly golden pancake onto her plate. "That's very thoughtful of you, sweetheart," he managed. "Your mom would be proud." They sat at their small kitchen table, the morning light now starting to filter through the worn curtains. Emma covered her pancakes in syrup, creating tiny pools that she carefully managed with her fork. Nathan watched her, his own breakfast barely touched. His wallet lay empty on the counter, aside from the lone $5 bill he'd been saving for emergency gas money. The pickup's engine coughed reluctantly to life when they headed out for school. Nathan patted the dashboard encouragingly. The old truck had gotten them this far, and he prayed it would hold together a little longer. Emma sang along to the static-filled radio, making up her own words when the signal faded. "Daddy," she said during a commercial break, "do you think angels do kind things too?" Nathan glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her face serious in the early morning light. "I believe they do, Emma. Sometimes they work through people like you and me. Like when you fixed Mr. Peterson's heater for free?" "Well," Nathan felt his cheeks warm. He hadn't known Emma had noticed that. "Mr. Peterson is on a fixed income, and it was getting cold." "Mrs. Thompson says that's called paying it forward," Emma declared proudly. "When you do something nice without expecting anything back." The truck rattled to a stop in front of Maplewood Elementary. Other parents in newer, cleaner cars dropped off their children, and Nathan felt the familiar pang of wanting to give Emma more. But she never complained, never seemed to notice the patches on her clothes or the way they counted pennies for milk money. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and gathered her backpack, then paused. "Daddy, are you okay? You look worried." Nathan quickly arranged his features into a smile. "I'm fine, Princess. Just thinking about work." She studied him with those knowing eyes that sometimes seemed too wise for her 7 years. Then she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. "Don't forget to do something kind today too, Daddy. It makes the heart bigger." "I won't forget," he promised, watching as she hopped down from the truck. She turned to wave one more time before running to join her friends, her backpack bouncing with each step. Nathan sat there for a moment, watching until she disappeared inside the building. The morning sun was fully up now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. He had 15 minutes to make it to Anderson's auto repair, where a full day of oil changes and brake jobs awaited. As he pulled away from the school, Nathan's hand brushed the lonely $5 bill in his pocket. The gas gauge hovered just above empty, and his stomach growled, reminding him of his uneaten breakfast. But Emma's words echoed in his mind. It makes the heart bigger. He drove toward the garage, unaware that this ordinary morning, with its cold floors and chipped mixing bowls, its struggling truck and empty wallet, was about to become anything but ordinary. The day ahead held changes he couldn't imagine, but for now, he was simply a father heading to work, carrying his daughter's wisdom about kindness in his heart. The neon sign of Jerry's Diner flickered against the gray December sky, its orange glow barely visible in the pale afternoon light. Nathan Cole pulled his worn pickup into the nearly empty parking lot, the engine coughing and sputtering before settling into an uneasy silence. The truck's exhaust pipe rattled against the undercarriage, a reminder of the repairs he couldn't afford. He sat for a moment, hands still gripping the steering wheel, gathering the energy to face another day. He checked his wallet one more time, $7 in crumpled bills, the edges soft from too much handling. It wasn't much, but it would have to last until payday on Friday. 3 more days. He could make it stretch if he was careful, if he chose between gas and groceries instead of getting both. The bell above the door chimed a cheerful tune as Nathan stepped inside, the sound oddly comforting in its familiarity. The familiar smell of coffee and grilled onions wrapped around him like a warm blanket, mixing with the faint aroma of fresh bread from the kitchen. The diner's red vinyl booths stretched along the windows, most of them empty except for an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner. Sarah, the longtime waitress with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, gave him a motherly smile from behind the counter. She'd been working at Jerry's for 15 years, watching customers come and go, treating each one like family. "The usual, Nathan?" she asked, already reaching for the coffee pot with practiced efficiency. Her voice carried the warmth of someone who genuinely cared about the people she served. "Just coffee today, Sarah. Thanks." He settled onto a red vinyl stool at the counter, his work clothes still carrying the scent of motor oil and metal shavings from the morning's repairs. The stool creaked slightly under his weight, worn smooth by countless customers over the years. Sarah poured the steaming coffee into a white ceramic mug, the liquid dark and rich. Her eyes, kind but observant, softened with concern as she studied his tired face. "You're working too hard, honey. When's the last time you had a real meal? And I mean something more than crackers and peanut butter." Nathan managed a tired smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm fine." "Really?" He wrapped his calloused hands around the warm mug, savoring the heat that seeped through the ceramic into his tired fingers. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly what he needed to push through the afternoon and evening until dinner time. Through the streaked diner window, he watched cars zoom past on the highway, their headlights cutting through the December gloom. Each vehicle carried someone's story, someone's struggles, someone's dreams. His own truck sat in the lot like a testament to better days. Its once shiny red paint, now dulled by years of Ohio sun and winter salt, rust creeping along the wheel wells like a slow disease. The coffee warmed his insides, spreading heat through his chest, but his stomach still growled in protest. The smell of fresh apple pie from the glass display case near the register wasn't helping matters. Golden crust dotted with cinnamon, steam still rising from the slits Sarah had cut in the top. Nathan checked his watch, still 40 minutes before he needed to pick up Emma from school. His daughter's face flashed in his mind, her gap-toothed smile brighter than any sunshine, the way she always hugged him tight when he arrived at the school pickup line. As he pulled out a crumpled dollar bill for the coffee, the bell chimed again. Cold air rushed in through the open door, but no footsteps followed. Nathan turned to look over his shoulder, catching sight of someone just outside the entrance. A woman stood there in the gathering dusk, her coat several sizes too big, threads hanging from the worn sleeves like forgotten memories. She wasn't looking at anyone directly, her eyes cast down at the concrete as if studying the cracks. Nathan stood up slowly, leaving his coffee half-finished and still steaming on the counter. Something about her posture spoke of desperation, trying to maintain dignity. The way she held her shoulders straight, despite the obvious weight of whatever burden she carried. He pushed the glass door open, the cold December air biting at his face and hands. The woman didn't move, didn't lift her head. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, competing with the sound of traffic and the wind rattling the bare branches of the oak tree beside the diner. Can you spare $5? Nathan's hand went to his wallet automatically, his fingers finding the familiar worn leather. $6 left after the coffee. He needed gas to get Emma home from school, and they'd need something for dinner tonight. His mind did the math rapidly. It wouldn't be enough either way. Even without giving away the $5, he'd still come up short. But something deeper than mathematics, something that lived in the space where his heart made decisions his head couldn't understand, moved within him. The woman's shoulders hunched against the wind that swept across the parking lot, carrying the scent of coming snow. Nathan noticed how her hands trembled, fingers red and chapped from the cold. Not from drugs or drink. He'd seen enough of that working downtown at the old garage. This was the trembling of someone trying to hold themselves together when everything else was falling apart. "Stay warm, ma'am," he said softly, his voice gentle as he held out the $5 bill. The money felt both weightless and heavy in his fingers. She finally looked up, and Nathan felt his breath catch. Her eyes were clear and brown, the color of autumn leaves, filled with tears that refused to fall. Something in them reminded him of Emma's mother during those last difficult months. That same quiet strength in the face of overwhelming odds, that same refusal to give up, even when giving up would have been easier. The woman's hand shook as she took the money, her fingers brushing his for just a moment, cold as winter morning, but somehow conveying warmth. Their eyes met for a brief moment that seemed to stretch longer than time should allow. In that connection, Nathan saw something he recognized. Not hopelessness, but its opposite. The desperate clinging to belief that tomorrow could be better. That kindness still existed in a world that often felt harsh and uncaring. She opened her mouth as if to speak, words forming on her lips, but nothing came except a soft intake of breath. A city bus rumbled past on the highway, its brakes squealing as it stopped at the corner near the traffic light. Diesel exhaust mixed with the cold air, and the bus's headlights swept across the parking lot. When the large vehicle pulled away into the evening traffic, the woman was gone, leaving Nathan standing alone in the cold December air with only the memory of brown eyes and the echo of whispered gratitude. Back in his truck, Nathan sat quietly in the driver's seat, his hands resting on the steering wheel. The vinyl seat creaked as he settled back, and he could see his breath forming small clouds in the cab's interior. His stomach growled louder now, reminding him of the $2 left in his wallet. It wouldn't buy much of a dinner for him and Emma. Maybe a can of soup they could share, or some bread, and whatever was left in their nearly empty refrigerator. But somehow, despite the growing hunger and the weight of tomorrow's worries, he felt lighter, as if he'd been carrying a burden he hadn't noticed until it was gone. He looked up at the gray sky through his windshield, where the first stars were beginning to appear between the clouds. The dashboard clock glowed green in the gathering darkness, reminding him that Emma would be waiting. "Maybe that's what faith looks like," he whispered, the words forming a small cloud in the cold air before disappearing into the silence. The small trailer creaked as the winter wind whistled outside. Nathan and Emma sat at their modest dinner table, a scratched wooden surface that had seen better days. Math worksheets and pencil shavings were scattered between their half-empty bowls of mac and cheese, tonight's budget dinner. 7 plus 5 equals. Nathan prompted gently, watching Emma's forehead wrinkle in concentration. 12. Emma declared, carefully writing the number with her purple pencil. "That was easy, Daddy." Nathan smiled, his tired eyes crinkling at the corners. "You're getting really good at this, sweetheart." He reached over to ruffle her hair, still damp from her evening bath. The familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, the same brand her mother used to use, made his heart ache with bittersweet memories. "Can we do the word problems now?" Emma asked, flipping to the next page. "Mrs. Thompson says I need extra practice with those." Before Nathan could answer, the phone rang, its harsh trill cutting through the peaceful evening quiet. He glanced at the clock. 7:43 p.m. His stomach tightened. Late calls usually meant bill collectors. "Keep working on your next problem," he told Emma, standing up. "I'll be right back." Nathan walked to the kitchen counter where the old cordless phone sat in its charging cradle. He took a deep breath and answered, "Hello? Good evening. Is this Mr. Nathan Cole?" A professional female voice asked. "Yes, this is he." Nathan turned away from Emma, lowering his voice. His fingers tensed around the phone. "I'm calling from Riverside Memorial Hospital's billing department. I wanted to inform you about your account regarding Sarah Cole's medical expenses." Nathan's throat went dry. Even after 2 years, hearing his wife's name in such an official context made his chest hurt. "Yes? I'm pleased to inform you that the remaining balance of your account, totaling $47,326.54, has been settled in full by an anonymous charitable foundation. The room seemed to tilt. Nathan grabbed the counter edge for support. I'm sorry, what did you say? The clerk's voice softened. Your wife's medical bills have been paid off completely, Mr. Cole. The foundation wishes to remain anonymous, but they've covered the entire remaining balance. Nathan's legs felt weak. He pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sank into it. This isn't a mistake? No, sir. The payment has been processed and verified. Your account now shows a zero balance. Hot tears pricked at Nathan's eyes. The weight of those medical bills had been crushing him for 2 years, a constant reminder of his failure to save Sarah, to provide enough. Now, in one phone call, that burden was lifting. Thank you, he managed to say, his voice thick. Please, if there's any way to contact this foundation, I'd like to express my gratitude. I'm sorry, sir, but they've requested complete anonymity. I can only tell you that they review cases of medical debt and choose recipients based on need and circumstances. After a few more details and another stammered thank you, Nathan hung up the phone. He sat there, staring at nothing, as tears rolled freely down his cheeks. Daddy? Emma's small voice broke through his daze. She stood beside him, her worksheet forgotten. Why are you crying? Are you sad? Nathan quickly wiped his eyes and pulled Emma onto his lap. No, baby, these are happy tears. He hugged her close, breathing in that sweet strawberry scent. Something wonderful just happened. Remember those big hospital bills from when Mommy was sick? Emma nodded solemnly. She'd overheard enough worried phone calls to understand they were something that made her daddy stressed. Well, someone very kind just paid them all off. We don't know who, but they helped us in a big way. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Then her face lit up with childhood certainty. I bet it was Mommy. She must have asked God to send us help. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He remembered Sarah's last coherent words to him. Take care of our girl. And Nathan, don't lose faith. God sends help in unexpected ways. He pulled Emma closer, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Maybe she did, sweetheart. Maybe she did. They sat together in the quiet kitchen, the wind still whistling outside. But inside, the air felt different, lighter somehow. Emma snuggled against his chest, humming a little tune Sarah used to sing. Can we say an extra thank you prayer tonight? She asked. Of course we can. Later, after homework was finished and Emma was tucked into bed, Nathan stood at his bedroom window. The moon peeked through scattered clouds, casting silver light on the frost-covered ground. For the first time in years, he felt something he'd almost forgotten, hope. Real, tangible hope. He thought about the woman at the diner, how giving away his last $5 had felt right, even when logic said it was foolish. Maybe Sarah had been right about unexpected help. Maybe faith wasn't about understanding everything, but about trusting enough to keep going. Nathan changed into his warm pajamas and slipped under the covers. His mattress was old and lumpy, but tonight it felt like the most comfortable bed in the world. As he drifted off to sleep, his heart felt lighter than it had since Sarah's passing. Tomorrow would still bring its challenges, the garage's struggling business, the ancient truck that needed repairs, the tight budget for groceries, but somehow those problems didn't seem quite as overwhelming anymore. A small voice drifted from Emma's room. Thank you, Mommy. Thank you, God. Nathan smiled in the darkness, adding his own silent thanks before closing his eyes. Nathan pulled into the garage's gravel parking lot just as the sun was beginning to peek over the frost-covered trees. The familiar smell of motor oil and rubber usually brought him comfort, but today something felt off. The lot was empty, no other workers' vehicles in sight. His boots crunched on the frozen gravel as he approached the main entrance. There, taped to the glass door, was a white piece of paper that made his heart sink. Closed permanently. Thank you for your patronage. No, Nathan muttered, fumbling with his key ring. Before he could try the lock, the side door creaked open. Bob Miller, the owner, emerged looking 10 years older than he had yesterday. Nathan. Bob's voice was heavy. I was hoping to catch you before you heard it somewhere else. What happened? Nathan asked, though he already knew the answer. He'd seen the mounting bills on Bob's desk, noticed how the stream of customers had slowed to a trickle over the past months. Bob ran a weathered hand through his thinning gray hair. Winter hit us hard this year, parts getting more expensive, folks putting off repairs. I tried everything to keep us afloat, but the bank's calling in the loans. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Your last check's in here. Wish I could offer severance, but—" "I understand," Nathan said quietly, taking the envelope. His mind was already racing through numbers: rent due in 2 weeks, groceries running low, Emma needing new winter boots. Bob clasped Nathan's shoulder. "You're the best mechanic I've ever worked with, son. I'll make some calls, see if anyone's hiring." "Thanks, Bob." Nathan managed a small smile, but his chest felt tight. "Need any help cleaning out?" "Nah, you go on. Start looking before everyone else does." Nathan spent the next hours driving from shop to shop, his resume printed on cheap paper at the library last month, growing more wrinkled with each stop. The responses were all the same: "Not hiring, maybe in spring, leave your number." By late afternoon, he'd covered every garage in a 20-mile radius. His truck's gas gauge hovered near empty as he pulled into the overlook point outside town. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, but Nathan barely noticed. He sat on his truck's tailgate, the metal cold through his jeans, and pulled out his wallet. The leather was worn thin, empty, except for Emma's school photo, and exactly $32. Not even enough for a week's groceries. He thought about the $5 he'd given away yesterday and couldn't bring himself to regret it. That woman's eyes had held such desperation, the same kind he was feeling now. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor. "Nathan, dear, you need to see this." There was a link to a local news Facebook page. The video was shaky, clearly taken from inside the diner. Through the window, he could see himself talking to the woman in the ragged coat. The caption read, "Mystery mechanic gives last money to stranger. Who else knows this local hero?" Nathan's stomach churned. Already there were hundreds of shares, comments pouring in. "So touching. We need more people like this." "Anyone know who he is?" He quickly closed the app, his hands shaking slightly. The last thing he needed was attention. What would people think if they knew the hero couldn't even provide for his own daughter? The drive home felt longer than usual. Emma was already setting the table when he walked in, humming as she placed their mismatched plates. "Daddy, guess what? We're writing kindness essays at school." She bounced on her toes, pigtails swinging. "Mine's about how Tommy shared his crayons with me when mine broke." "What kind thing did you do today?" Nathan swallowed hard, forcing his face into a smile as he hung up his jacket. "Well, sweetheart, I helped Mr. Miller clean up the garage a bit. It wasn't exactly a lie, but..." His heart ached at the omission. Emma chatted away as they ate the last of the spaghetti from Sunday's batch cooking. Nathan nodded at the right moments, trying to focus on her words instead of the mounting pressure in his chest. And Mrs. Patterson says, sometimes the smallest kindnesses are the biggest ones. Emma continued, twirling pasta around her fork. "Like when you give someone a smile when they're sad." His phone buzzed again. Another text, this time from an unknown number. "Video of you at Miller's Diner going viral. People want to know your story." Nathan set the phone face down, his appetite vanishing. Emma looked up, marinara sauce on her chin. "Is everything okay, Daddy?" "Everything's fine, Princess." He reached across the table to wipe her chin with a napkin. "Tell me more about your essay." The phone kept buzzing as Emma described her plans to illustrate her story with drawings of stick figures sharing crayons. Each notification felt like another weight on Nathan's shoulders, but he kept his voice steady, his smile fixed in place. He couldn't let Emma see his fear. Not now, not ever. As she spoke, he found himself thinking about that $5. How could such a small amount of money create such a big ripple? He'd only done what felt right in the moment. Now, when he needed anonymity most, his simple act of kindness was drawing unwanted attention. The phone buzzed again and again. Nathan left it on the table, focusing instead on Emma's bright eyes and animated gestures. Whatever tomorrow would bring, at least for these few precious moments, he could pretend everything was normal. That he wasn't just hours away from having to figure out how to tell his daughter that their whole world had just shifted beneath their feet. Outside, the winter wind picked up, rattling the trailer's thin walls. Emma didn't seem to notice, lost in her story about kindness and sharing. Nathan listened, holding on to her words like a lifeline, while his phone continued its silent dance across the dinner table. Nathan's phone buzzed incessantly on his nightstand, pulling him from a restless sleep. The dim morning light filtered through the thin curtains of his trailer as he reached for the device, squinting at the screen. 12 missed calls and nearly 30 text messages flooded his notifications. "What in the world?" he mumbled, sitting up in bed. His thumb scrolled through message after message, each one saying nearly the same thing. "You're all over social media." And "Have you seen the video?" A text from his cousin included a link. Nathan tapped it, and his stomach tightened as the video loaded. There he was, outside the diner, captured by someone's phone through a window. The footage showed him reaching into his wallet, handing the $5 bill to the woman in the ragged coat. The video's title read, "Single Dad Gives Last $5 to Stranger. Faith in Humanity Restored." "Oh no," Nathan whispered, running a hand through his hair. The view count was already over 1 million. A soft knock at his bedroom door interrupted his thoughts. "Daddy?" Emma's voice called out. "There are people with cameras outside." Nathan jumped up and peered through the window. Sure enough, 3 news vans had parked along the street, and reporters stood in the morning chill, their breath visible in the cold air. "It's okay, sweetie," he said, though his heart raced. "Just get ready for school like normal. I'll handle this." While Emma got dressed, Nathan threw on his cleanest work shirt and tried to make himself presentable. His phone kept buzzing now with calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He ignored them all. The drive to Emma's school proved challenging. 2 news cars followed them, keeping a respectful distance but persistent nonetheless. Emma watched them through the rear window, fascinated. "Are you famous now, Daddy?" she asked. Nathan gripped the steering wheel tighter. "No, sweetheart. Someone just filmed me helping someone, that's all. Like when Jesus helped people?" Her innocent question made his throat tight. "Well, I wouldn't say that. I just did what anyone should do." At the school, Mrs. Thompson, Emma's teacher, was waiting outside with her usual warm smile. But today, it was different, brighter, more emotional. "Mr. Cole," she said as Emma hopped out of the truck, "I saw the video this morning. What a beautiful example you've set for our students." She wiped at her eyes, especially during Kindness Week. Nathan felt his face grow hot. "Really, it wasn't anything special, but it was," Mrs. Thompson insisted. "The children are already talking about it. Sometimes the simplest acts make the biggest difference." Across town, in the gleaming Hart-Tech Tower, Evelyn Hart sat in her corner office, staring at her laptop screen. She'd watched the video 20 times already, each viewing bringing fresh tears to her eyes. Her assistant had sent it to her with a simple note. "Thought you should see this." The woman in the ragged coat that had been her, 2 days ago, she'd been conducting her anonymous survey of small-town America, trying to understand the real impact of poverty after her husband's death had opened her eyes to life's fragility. She'd disguised herself, asked for help, and documented people's responses. But this man, this tired-looking father with kind eyes, he'd done something no one else had. He'd given without hesitation, despite clearly having so little himself. Evelyn touched her screen where his face showed. She remembered the warmth in his voice when he'd said, "Stay warm, ma'am. No judgment, no questions asked. Just pure compassion." Her office phone buzzed. "Miss Hart, the board meeting starts in 5 minutes." "Cancel it," she said, still watching the video. "Cancel everything today." "But ma'am, just do it, please." Evelyn stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below her, a maze of steel and glass that represented everything she'd achieved. Hart-Tech was worth billions. She could buy anything she wanted. Yet this man with only $5 to his name had given her something money couldn't buy, a reminder of genuine human kindness. She thought of her late husband Michael, and how he'd always said she worked too hard, forgot to feel. He was right, she whispered, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. A tear slid down her cheek as she watched the morning traffic far below. That man gave his last dollar when I couldn't even give my heart. Her reflection stared back at her. Perfectly coiffed hair and designer suit, a stark contrast to the disguise she'd worn that day. In her pocket, she still carried the $5 bill he'd given her. She'd meant to frame it as a reminder of her research project, but now it felt like something more sacred, a symbol of what she'd lost touch with in her rise to the top. Back at his trailer, Nathan finally managed to speak briefly with the reporters. He kept his answers simple and honest. "I just did what my mother taught me," he told them, "what I hope my daughter learns. Sometimes faith means giving, even when your own pocket is empty." When asked if he regretted giving away his last $5, Nathan smiled. The only regret would have been walking away. Money comes and goes, but kindness that stays with you forever. The reporters pressed for more, but Nathan politely excused himself. He had job applications to fill out, and Emma would need dinner later. As he closed his door on the media circus outside, he said a quiet prayer. "Lord, if you're using this to teach me something, I'm listening. Just help me keep Emma's world steady through whatever comes next." Across town, in the sleek penthouse suite of the Madison Hotel, Evelyn Hart stood at her floor-to-ceiling window, watching the sunrise over Maplewood's modest skyline. Her reflection stared back at her perfectly tailored suit. Not a hair out of place, but her eyes held a weariness that no amount of success could mask. She turned to her assistant, Sarah, who sat with a tablet in hand, ready to reorganize Evelyn's packed schedule. "Cancel my meetings for the next week," Evelyn said quietly. Sarah looked up, startled. "But Miss Hart, the board meeting can wait." Evelyn's voice was firm but gentle. I need to understand what's happening in the real world, not just through reports and statistics." She walked to her bedroom and emerged wearing jeans and a simple sweater clothes she'd bought at a local department store the day before. Without her signature power suit and styled hair, she looked different, softer, more like the woman she'd been before becoming CEO, before losing James. "I'll be staying at the Pine Grove Inn," she told Sarah. "Use my personal email only if it's urgent." She paused, touching the wedding ring she still wore. "James always said we were losing touch with reality up here." He was right. The drive to the small inn took her through Maplewood's working-class neighborhoods. She passed weathered houses with carefully tended yards, corner stores with hand-painted signs, and churches with community bulletin boards advertising food drives and prayer meetings. Her rental car, a modest sedan, blended perfectly with the others on the road. At the Pine Grove Inn, the elderly owner, Mrs. Peterson, showed her to a simple but clean room. "Business or pleasure, dear?" she asked kindly. "Neither, really," Evelyn replied. "Just trying to find something I lost." The next morning, Evelyn walked to the Maplewood Community Center. A sign outside advertised their family assistance program. Inside, volunteers sorted, donated clothes, and packed food boxes. Evelyn introduced herself as Eve Wilson and asked how she could help. "Oh, thank goodness," said Linda, the coordinator. "We're short-handed today. Can you help with the children's activity room? Some parents leave their kids here while they look for work or attend job training." The children's room was bright with crayon drawings and construction paper chains. About 8 children played there, supervised by a teenage volunteer. Evelyn's heart clenched. She and James had always planned to have children, but work had seemed more important then. A little girl with bright eyes and auburn hair sat at a table, carefully coloring. Something about her seemed familiar. The teen volunteer noticed Evelyn watching. "That's Emma," she said. "She's here while her dad job hunts. Sweet kid never complains, always tries to cheer everyone up." As if on cue, Emma held up her drawing to show another child. "See, it's my daddy fixing Mrs. Johnson's car. He didn't make her pay because she's old and alone. He says helping people is more important than money." Evelyn's breath caught. She moved closer, pretending to organize some toys. "My daddy fixes lots of things," Emma continued proudly, "even when he's really tired. Sometimes he skips dinner so I can have enough, but he always smiles and says, 'God will provide.'" The other children listened, drawn to Emma's earnest voice. "Yesterday, he got really good news about Mommy's hospital bills, but then really bad news about his job. But he still made me pancakes this morning and said everything would be okay." Evelyn turned away, her eyes stinging. She busied herself with straightening books until she could trust her voice again. The afternoon passed quickly. Evelyn helped children with puzzles, read stories, and watch them play. But her attention kept returning to Emma, whose gentle spirit and unwavering faith in her father touched something deep inside her. At 3 o'clock, Linda came to the door. "Emma, your daddy's here." Evelyn moved to the window, keeping partially hidden behind a bookshelf. A worn pickup truck had parked outside. From it emerged the man from the video, Nathan Cole. Even tired and worried, he carried himself with quiet dignity. His whole face lit up when Emma ran to him. "Hey, sunshine," he said, scooping her up. "Did you have a good day?" "The best. I made new friends, and Miss Eve helped me with my puzzle." Nathan glanced toward the center, and for a moment, Evelyn thought he might come inside. She stepped further behind the bookshelf, her heart pounding, but he just smiled, set Emma down, and took her hand. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Ready to head home? Maybe we can read an extra chapter tonight." "Can we pray for the nice lady you helped? And for your new job?" "Of course we can." Evelyn watched them walk to the truck, Emma skipping beside her father. Nathan helped her in, checked her seatbelt, and closed the door carefully. Before getting in himself, he paused and looked up at the sky for a moment, as if gathering strength. Through the window, Evelyn could see Emma chattering animatedly while Nathan listened with complete attention, nodding and smiling despite the obvious weight on his shoulders. As they drove away, Evelyn touched her own cheek. surprised to find it wet with tears. She recognized the emotion rising in her chest, something she hadn't felt since James died. Purpose, not the driven ambition that had propelled her to CEO, but something purer. Something that reminded her of when she and James had first started their company, determined to make a difference in people's lives. Linda appeared beside her. They're special, aren't they? Nathan and Emma. Life's been hard on them since Sarah, that's Emma's mom, passed away, but they never lose their kindness. Evelyn nodded, unable to speak. She watched the truck disappear around the corner, knowing she couldn't reveal herself yet. Not until she understood more, not until she found the right way to help without diminishing the quiet dignity she'd witnessed today. Morning sunlight streamed through the diner's wide windows, casting warm squares across the checkered floor. Evelyn Hart, dressed in faded jeans and a simple sweater, sat alone in a corner booth. Gone were her designer suits and perfect makeup. Instead, she wore minimal cosmetics and had pulled her hair into a casual ponytail. She watched as Nathan Cole entered, making his way to the counter. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped in from the cold. His work jacket was worn at the elbows, but clean. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his exhaustion, yet he greeted the waitress with a genuine smile. "The usual, Nathan?" asked Rita, the elderly waitress, already pouring him coffee. "Just coffee today, Rita. Thanks." He pulled out his wallet, counted the change carefully. Evelyn took a deep breath, steadying herself. She'd rehearsed this moment countless times. Standing up, she approached the counter, sliding onto the stool next to him. "Excuse me," she said, keeping her voice soft. "Are you Nathan Cole? I saw you on the news." Nathan's shoulders tensed slightly. "Look, I really don't want any—" "Oh no, nothing like that," Evelyn quickly added. "I'm Eve Harper. I volunteer with the Community Outreach Project. We help families get back on their feet." The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. "That's good work you do, but I'm not looking for charity." Rita placed a steaming mug in front of Nathan. Evelyn noticed how his hands wrapped around it, seeking warmth. "Actually, I was hoping to learn more about your mobile repair service idea, the one you mentioned in the interview." Nathan's eyes widened slightly. "That was just a dream, really. Something I've thought about, helping folks who can't afford regular shop rates." "Would you mind telling me more?" Evelyn gestured to an empty booth. "I'll buy you breakfast." Nathan started to decline, but his stomach betrayed him with a quiet growl. Color rose in his cheeks. "Please," Evelyn said, "consider it research for our outreach program." They moved to the booth, and Rita appeared with menus. Nathan ordered modestly eggs and toast, while Evelyn chose pancakes she barely touched, focused instead on drawing him out. "So, how did you get into mechanics?" she asked, watching him cut his eggs into neat sections. "My dad taught me. He had a shop when I was growing up." Nathan's face softened at the memory. "I practically lived there after school, learning everything I could. Dad always said knowing how to fix things was like having magic in your hands. And now you fix things for others? When I can. Lots of folks around here are just getting by. A broken car can mean losing their job." He paused, pushing eggs around his plate. "My wife Sarah, before she got sick, she always encouraged me to help where I could." Evelyn's heart tightened. "I'm sorry about your wife." Nathan nodded, quiet for a moment. 2 years ago, cancer. Emma was only 5. He took a sip of coffee. The medical bills. Well, they took everything. But somehow, God keeps providing, like with those bills being paid off. "And your dream, the mobile service?" His eyes lit up despite his obvious attempt to temper his enthusiasm. "The idea is to convert an old box truck into a mobile garage. Drive to people who can't get to a shop. Maybe hire some other single parents, veterans, folks who need a second chance. Let them work flexible hours around their families." "That's beautiful," Evelyn said softly, meaning it. "Yeah, well." Nathan shrugged, embarrassment crossing his features. "Dreams are free, right?" They talked for another hour. Evelyn asked careful questions about his experience, his skills, what equipment he'd need. Nathan grew more animated as he described different repairs he'd done, his hands moving as he explained complex mechanical problems in simple terms. When they finally stood to leave, Evelyn touched his arm lightly. "Thank you for sharing your story, Nathan. You've given me a lot to think about." Back in her hotel room, Evelyn made a call to James Morrison, an old friend who'd recently opened a chain of auto repair shops. "James, I need a favor," she explained. Nathan's situation, careful to leave out her personal connection. "He's exactly what you've been looking for in a master mechanic. If you're vouching for him, Eve, that's good enough for me." That evening, Nathan sat on his worn couch, staring at his phone in disbelief. James Morrison's Auto Care wanted to interview him for a position as lead mechanic at their new Maplewood location. The salary was more than he'd ever made, with full benefits. He walked to Emma's room, where she knelt beside her bed for prayers. Her small hands were clasped tightly, eyes squeezed shut. "Dear God," she whispered, "thank you for helping Daddy smile today. And thank you for the nice lady at the diner who bought him breakfast. Mommy always said angels sometimes look like regular people." Nathan's throat tightened. He knelt beside her, adding his own silent prayer of gratitude. For the first time in months, hope felt real solid enough to hold on to. "Daddy?" Emma's sleepy voice broke through his thoughts. "Are things getting better?" He kissed her forehead, tucking the blanket around her shoulders. "Yes, sweetheart, I think they are." Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, with frost sparkling on the windshields of parked cars. Nathan Cole pulled his old pickup into the lot of Harper Auto Works, arriving 20 minutes early for his first day. His hands gripped the steering wheel as he took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. The building looked nothing like his old workplace. Fresh paint covered the exterior walls, and large windows gleamed in the morning light. The concrete parking area had been recently sealed, without a single oil stain in sight. A row of neatly trimmed bushes lined the front of the building, adding a touch of professionalism he wasn't used to seeing at an auto shop. "Lord, please help me do this right," Nathan whispered, gathering his toolbox from the passenger seat. The metal handle felt cold against his palm as he walked toward the entrance. "Hey!" Bell chimed softly as he pushed open the glass door. The interior stopped him in his tracks. Clean white walls surrounded a spacious reception area with comfortable chairs and current magazines laid out on a coffee table. The air smelled faintly of coffee and pine cleaner instead of grease and oil. "You must be Nathan Cole." A man in his 60s emerged from a back office, walking with the slight stiffness of someone who'd spent decades working with his hands. He wore crisp blue work clothes with Bennett embroidered above the pocket. Deep smile lines creased his weathered face. "I'm Jim Bennett, the owner." "Yes, sir. Thank you for this opportunity." Nathan shifted his toolbox to shake the older man's extended hand. Strong grip. "Mister," Bennett noted with approval. "Come on back. Let me show you around." The garage area beyond the reception was even more impressive. Gleaming tools hung in perfect order on pegboard walls. 4 hydraulic lifts stood ready, their mechanisms clearly well maintained. The concrete floor looked clean enough to eat off. "This is quite a setup," Nathan said, unable to hide his amazement. "Mr. Bennett's eyes crinkled. "We believe in doing things right here. You came highly recommended, son." Nathan glanced at him curiously. "If you don't mind me asking, by whom?" "Let's just say someone vouched for your character." "Mr. Bennett replied with a slight smile. "That means more to me than any resume." They walked past the lifts to a massive toolbox. "This'll be your station," Mr. Bennett explained. "We've got our first customer coming in at 8. Transmission issues on a 2015 Camry." Nathan ran his hand along the smooth metal drawers. "This is too much, sir." "Nonsense. Good tools for good work. That's our philosophy here." "Mister?" Bennett handed him a set of keys. Building key, toolbox key, and gate key. "We trust our people here." Throughout the morning, Nathan threw himself into the work. The Camry's transmission needed a complete rebuild, but he found himself loving every minute of it. The shop's diagnostic equipment was top of the line, making troubleshooting easier than he'd ever experienced. During lunch break, he sat in the small break room, unwrapping the sandwich he'd packed. Mr. Bennett joined him with a thermos of coffee. "How are you finding everything?" the older man asked, pouring 2 cups. "Honestly, it's like a dream," Nathan admitted. "I keep waiting to wake up." Mr. Bennett chuckled. "You're doing fine work out there. I watched how you handled that transmission. Methodical, careful. That's what we need here." The afternoon brought more challenges. An elderly woman came in with an ancient Volvo that other shops had declared beyond repair. Nathan spent hours tracking down the electrical issue, refusing to give up. "My husband bought this car new," she'd explained tearfully. "I can't bear to part with it." By 6 o'clock, when most of the staff had gone home, Nathan was still working on the Volvo. "Mr. Bennett stopped by his station." "Day's over, son. That can wait till tomorrow." Nathan looked up from the engine compartment, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Almost got it, sir. Just need another 30 minutes. The older man studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, lock up when you're done." And Nathan, good first day. At 7:15, Nathan closed the Volvo's hood with satisfaction. The engine purred like new. He cleaned his tools meticulously, returning each to its proper place on the board. The sense of accomplishment felt better than any paycheck. As he gathered his things to leave, Nathan paused to look around the shop. The setting sun painted long shadows through the high windows, gleaming off the polished tools and clean floors. Everything about this place spoke of excellence and pride in craft. He said a silent prayer of gratitude for this unexpected blessing. Across the street, hidden in the growing darkness, a black luxury sedan idled quietly. Behind its tinted windows, Evelyn Hart watched Nathan emerge from the shop. Even from this distance, she could see his tired but satisfied expression. A small smile played across her face as she observed him carefully lock the door and head to his truck. She waited until his taillights disappeared around the corner before starting her engine. As she pulled away from the curb, her smile lingered, unseen in the gathering dusk. 3 weeks into Nathan's new job at Harper Auto Works, the morning sun cast long shadows across the garage floor. The familiar scent of motor oil and fresh coffee filled the air as Nathan finished his first repair of the day. He wiped his hands on a shop rag when Eve Harper, as Evelyn still called herself, walked through the bay doors, carrying a folder and wearing simple jeans and a volunteer t-shirt. "Good morning, Nathan," she said, her usual corporate polish hidden beneath casual warmth. "Do you have a minute?" Nathan nodded, tossing the rag into a nearby bin. "Sure thing. Miss Harper, what's on your mind?" Evelyn spread some papers across a clean workbench. "I've been thinking about starting something new, a community initiative called Fix It Forward. The idea is to help people who can't afford car repairs." She looked up at him, gauging his reaction. "We'd work weekends, volunteers only. I was hoping you might be interested in leading the mechanical side." Nathan's eyes scanned the documents, liability forms, schedules, supply lists. His expression brightened with each page. "This is exactly what I've always wanted to do." He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it slightly disheveled. "But how would we fund it?" "Leave that to me," Evelyn said softly. "I have some connections with local businesses willing to donate parts." The following Saturday morning, Harper Auto Works transformed into a community hub. Nathan arrived early to find volunteers setting up folding tables with coffee and donuts. Emma bounced alongside him, carrying a container of homemade chocolate chip cookies she'd insisted on baking. "Daddy, can I give cookies to the helpers?" Emma asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Nathan smiled, remembering how his late wife used to do the same at church functions. "Of course, sweetie. Just make sure to save some for the people getting their cars fixed, too." The first car rolled in a tired-looking minivan belonging to a single mother of 3. Nathan popped the hood and assessed the situation while Emma offered the woman a cookie. "Timing belt's shot," he explained gently, "but we'll take care of it. No charge." Throughout the morning, more vehicles arrived. Nathan moved efficiently between them, teaching younger volunteers basic maintenance while handling the complex repairs himself. His expertise showed in every patient explanation, every careful adjustment. Emma weaved between the busy workers, offering encouragement in the form of cookies and innocent smiles. "My daddy can fix anything," she told anyone who would listen. "He says broken things just need someone to believe in them." Evelyn watched from various corners of the garage, her heart swelling at the scene before her. She'd seen million-dollar deals closed with less grace than Nathan showed while explaining to an elderly gentleman how to check his oil. The genuine care in his voice, the way he took time with each person, it was everything her corporate world lacked. Local news crews showed up midday, drawn by social media buzz about the event. Nathan shied away from their cameras, focusing instead on a stubborn alternator. "The story's not about me," he told a persistent reporter. "It's about community people, helping people." As afternoon shadows lengthened, the last car pulled away. Volunteers gathered tools and swept floors, while Emma handed out the final cookies. The day's tally showed impressive results. 17 vehicles repaired, 32 oil changes completed, and countless small fixes handled on the spot. Nathan wiped grease from his hands as Evelyn approached. The garage had emptied except for them and Emma, who was carefully arranging her empty cookie container in her backpack. "Thank you for today," Evelyn said quietly. "You didn't just fix cars, you gave people hope." Nathan shrugged, his eyes warm but modest. "I just do what I can." The simple statement hit Evelyn like a physical force. Here was a man who had given his last $5 to a stranger to her, though he didn't know it, and now had spent his only day off helping others without a second thought. His humility wasn't an act. It was the core of who he was. Emma skipped over and took her father's hand. "Can we do this again next week, Daddy? Please?" Nathan looked to Evelyn, who nodded with a smile she couldn't quite hide. "Every Saturday," she confirmed, "as long as people need us." Late March brought warmer breezes to Maplewood, Ohio. The winter's stubborn chill finally released its grip, and with it, Nathan Cole felt his own frozen hopes beginning to thaw. Standing in the driveway of Harper Auto Works, he watched Emma hop off the school bus, her backpack bouncing with each step. "Daddy, look what I made!" She waved a colorful drawing in the air as she ran toward him. Her pink sneakers, still new from their recent shopping trip, sparkled in the afternoon sun. Nathan knelt down to examine her artwork. "Is that our truck?" he asked, pointing to the faded blue pickup he'd been restoring during his lunch breaks. "Uh-huh. And see? That's you fixing cars for people who need help." Emma's finger traced over stick figures with bright smiles. "And that's Miss Eve bringing you coffee, just like she always does." Nathan couldn't help but smile. Eve Harper had become a regular presence at the garage, usually arriving around 3 with 2 cups of coffee and a cookie for Emma. There was something familiar about her that he couldn't quite place, but her kindness felt genuine. "Speaking of the truck," Nathan said, taking Emma's hand, "want to see what I did today?" They walked around to the side of the garage where the old pickup sat. Its rusty patches were slowly disappearing under fresh paint, and the engine now purred instead of coughed. Nathan had found it at a junkyard 2 weeks ago, and Mr. Bennett had let him work on it between jobs. "It's getting prettier," Emma exclaimed, running her hand along the newly smooth fender. "Just like your mom's garden in spring," Nathan said softly. "Little by little, right?" Emma nodded, understanding in her young eyes. "Can we put flowers in it, like Mom used to have?" "Maybe a small vase on the dashboard," Nathan agreed. "But first, we need to finish the special compartments for my tools. This truck's going to help a lot of people once it's ready." The sound of gravel crunching announced another arrival. Eve's modest sedan pulled up, right on schedule. She stepped out carrying her usual coffee tray and a paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. "I heard someone earned an A on their spelling test," Eve called out, smiling warmly at Emma. "Miss Eve." Emma ran to her, careful not to bump the coffee tray. "Did Daddy tell you?" Mrs. Peterson at the bakery did, actually. She saw it posted on the school's parent board. Eve handed Emma the paper bag. "I thought that deserved a special treat." Nathan watched their interaction, noting how naturally Eve connected with his daughter. She never talked down to Emma or treated her with that artificial sweetness some adults use with children. "The truck's looking good," Eve observed, handing Nathan his coffee. "That new paint really brings out its character." "Thanks to Mr. Bennett's generosity with the workspace," Nathan replied. "I'm hoping to have it road ready by summer." The idea is to make it a mobile repair service. Help folks who can't make it to a garage. Eve's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant, Nathan. A lot of people could use that kind of help." They spent the next hour, like they often did these days, Emma doing homework at the small desk Nathan had set up in the corner, while he and Eve talked about his plans for the mobile garage. She asked thoughtful questions about logistics and offered practical suggestions about permits and insurance. "You've got a good business mind," Nathan commented, impressed by her knowledge. Eve's smile flickered slightly. "I've picked up a few things over the years." She changed the subject quickly. "Emma, honey, what's that you're working on now?" "My kindness journal." Emma held up a notebook decorated with stickers. "We write down nice things we see people do. I wrote about Daddy's truck today." Nathan felt his chest tighten with pride and gratitude. His daughter had inherited her mother's gift for finding beauty in simple things. The steady paycheck from Harper Auto Works meant Emma could have new shoes when she needed them. The kitchen cupboard stayed full now. Small blessings, but they felt enormous after years of scraping by. As the afternoon light began to fade, Eve gathered her things to leave. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, though they all knew she'd be there. "We'll be here," Nathan assured her. Emma gave her a tight hug before running inside to use the garage's bathroom. Later that evening, after dropping Emma at home with their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, for an hour, Nathan returned to the garage. The nearly restored truck sat bathed in moonlight streaming through the high windows. He ran his hand along its hood, remembering how his wife used to say that broken things just needed patience and love to become beautiful again. The truck's transformation mirrored his own life lately. The crushing weight of debt had lifted. Emma's nightmares had stopped. He even had a small savings account started. Standing there in the quiet garage, Nathan felt a deep sense of peace. "Maybe life's giving me a second chance," he whispered to the moonlit truck, his words soft but full of hope. The chrome bumper gleamed in response, and Nathan could almost hear Sarah's gentle laugh on the evening breeze. She would have loved this, seeing him build something new from broken pieces, just like he was rebuilding their life, one small blessing at a time. The tools laid out on his workbench caught the moonlight, ready for tomorrow's work. Each one represented a skill he could use to help others, just as others had helped him. The thought reminded him of that cold day at the diner, when he'd given away his last $5. He never did find out what happened to that woman, but somehow that moment had sparked a chain of goodness he still couldn't fully explain. The community center buzzed with excitement as locals filled every seat in the main hall. Handmade Kindness Week banners decorated the walls, and children's artwork depicting acts of kindness brought splashes of color to the normally plain space. The afternoon sun streamed through tall windows, warming the wooden floors and casting long shadows across the gathering crowd. Nathan Cole stood backstage, tugging at his borrowed tie. His weathered hands, still bearing traces of engine grease despite thorough scrubbing, fidgeted with the wrinkled note cards in his pocket. Emma sat nearby on a folding chair, swinging her legs and humming softly while coloring in her sketch pad. "You okay, Daddy?" she asked, looking up with those knowing eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. "Just nervous, sweetie." Nathan managed a small smile, not used to speaking in front of so many people. "Just pretend you're telling me a bedtime story," Emma suggested, returning to her drawing. "Those are always perfect." In the audience, Evelyn Hart sat quietly in the back row, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her now familiar Eve Harper disguise. Her heart raced as she watched the foundation representative take the stage, knowing what was about to unfold. The representative, a friendly woman named Sarah, tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an extraordinary announcement today. The Hartford Community Foundation has decided to support one local initiative that embodies the spirit of kindness in action." Nathan stepped onto the stage when called, his work boots making hollow sounds against the wooden platform. The spotlight felt warm on his face as he gazed out at the sea of familiar faces, customers whose cars he'd fixed, neighbors he'd helped, friends who'd supported him through the darkest times. "As many of you know," Sarah continued, "Nathan Cole has been working to launch Fix It Forward, a mobile repair service that would help low-income families, single parents, and veterans maintain their vehicles at reduced or no cost. Today, we're thrilled to announce a grant of $100,000 to make this dream a reality." The room erupted in applause. Emma squealed from backstage, running out to wrap her arms around her father's waist. Nathan stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, staring at the oversized check being brought onto stage. The amount seemed impossible, like a miracle made of numbers. When the applause finally died down, Nathan stepped to the microphone. His hands trembled as he pulled out his note cards, then stopped. Looking at Emma's beaming face, he tucked them back into his pocket. "Just tell a story," he thought. "You know," he began, his voice soft but steady. "A few months ago, I gave $5 to a stranger. It was all I had, and honestly, I was scared to give it away. But something my late wife used to say kept running through my mind. Kindness is faith with grease on its hands." A gentle laugh rippled through the audience. In the back, Evelyn pressed her hands together, fighting to maintain her composure. "Sarah," Nathan continued, gesturing to the foundation representative, "call this a dream coming true. But the real dream isn't about money or even fixing cars. It's about what happens when we stop seeing strangers and start seeing neighbors. When we stop counting what we lack and start sharing what little we have." Emma squeezed his hand, and Nathan drew strength from her presence. "That $5 I gave away? I thought it was my last hope disappearing. Instead, it was like throwing a tiny seed into fertile ground. Somehow, that small act brought me here, to all of you, to this moment, to this incredible opportunity to help others." His voice grew stronger, filled with quiet conviction. Fix It Forward isn't just about repairs. It's about believing that when we fix things together, cars, lives, hearts, we all move forward. Every wrench turned, every problem solved, every hand extended becomes another seed planted. The audience sat in rapt attention, many nodding in agreement. Some wiped away tears. So today, I stand here humbled and grateful. To the Hartford Foundation, thank you for this incredible gift. To this community, thank you for showing me that kindness multiplies when we share it. And to my daughter Emma, he looked down at her with shining eyes. Thank you for reminding me every day that love is the greatest act of kindness we can give. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding thunderously. Emma hugged her father tightly, her face glowing with pride. Nathan lifted her up, and she waved to everyone, her laughter carrying across the hall. In the back row, Evelyn dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The foundation representative, whom she'd carefully selected and briefed, had executed everything perfectly. The money would change Nathan's life, but it was his words that had changed hers. Watching him hold Emma, seeing the pure joy and gratitude in his expression, Evelyn felt the last walls around her heart crumbling. She needed to tell him the truth, soon. Not about the money, that could wait, but about who she was, about that cold day outside the diner, about how his simple act of kindness had awakened something she thought died with her husband. As the applause continued and people began surrounding Nathan with congratulations, Evelyn quietly wiped another tear from her cheek and made her silent promise. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, catching the dust motes and golden beams. Nathan and Emma stood in a sea of well-wishers, their faces bright with joy. The oversized check leaned against the podium, its numbers promising new beginnings. And in the back of the room, a CEO disguised as a volunteer felt her heart grow fuller with each passing moment, knowing that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the simplest acts of kindness. The early evening sun painted golden streaks across the Maplewood River, its gentle waters reflecting the warm spring light. Nathan sat on a weathered wooden bench, watching Emma skip stones across the water's surface. Her ice cream cone, vanilla with rainbow sprinkles, was already half gone, leaving a tiny smear of sweetness on her cheek. "Dad, look, 3 bounces!" Emma squealed, clapping her hands as the flat stone skipped across the river's surface before disappearing beneath the ripples. Nathan smiled, savoring his own simple chocolate cone. These peaceful moments felt like precious gifts after years of constant worry. The spring air carried the scent of blooming wildflowers, and somewhere nearby, birds called their evening songs. "Mind if I join you?" Nathan turned to find Eve as he knew her standing there with her own ice cream cone. She wore casual clothes today, jeans, a light sweater, and comfortable flats instead of her usual volunteer coordinator attire. "Miss Eve." Emma abandoned her stone-skipping mission and ran to give her a hug, careful not to disturb either of their ice cream cones. "Please, sit." Nathan gestured to the empty space on the bench. Emma was just showing off her stone-skipping talents. Evelyn settled beside them, a gentle breeze lifting her hair. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, watching Emma return to her game by the water's edge. "She reminds me of someone," Evelyn said softly, her eyes following Emma's movements. "Someone who used to find joy in simple things, before life got complicated." Nathan noticed the shadow that crossed her face. "Yourself?" She nodded, taking a small bite of her ice cream mint chocolate chip. "My husband used to bring me to places like this. Just quiet spots where we could forget about meetings and deadlines and..." She trailed off, then added quietly, "He passed away 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Nathan said, his voice gentle. "Loss has a way of changing everything, doesn't it?" Emma had found a particularly smooth stone and was showing it to a smaller child who had wandered near, teaching them the proper technique for skipping stones. "Your daughter," Evelyn began. "She has such a beautiful spirit. After my husband died, I threw myself into work, into accumulating more, everything. But watching her, watching both of you, I realized how empty all that was." Nathan turned to look at her, noting the guilt that seemed to weigh on her shoulders. "Why? You know, when Sarah, Emma's mom, passed away, I was angry at everyone who seemed to have an easier life. People with nice houses, reliable cars, healthy families." He paused, finishing the last bite of his cone. "But then Emma asked me something that changed everything." "What did she ask?" "She said, 'Daddy, if God gives some people more, maybe it's so they can share it with others who have less?' Out of the mouth of babes, right?" He chuckled softly. "Made me realize we're all just trying our best with what we've been given." Evelyn's ice cream began to drip, and she quickly wiped away a tear with her free hand. "But what if you live in luxury while others struggle? What if you've been blind to their needs for so long that you don't know how to make it right?" Nathan watched Emma teaching the younger child how to toss their stone just right. "We're all broken," he said softly, "just patched up differently, some with money, some with faith, some with the love of a child." He gestured toward Emma. "The patches don't matter as much as what we do with them." Emma came running back, her ice cream cone finally finished. "Miss Eve, why are you crying?" Evelyn quickly wiped her eyes, offering a warm smile. "Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're happy, sweetheart. Like when Daddy cried at my school play." Emma climbed onto the bench between them. Nathan laughed, ruffling her hair. "Exactly like that. Can you tell us a story about your husband? Emma asked Evelyn innocently. Daddy says it helps to remember happy things about people we miss. Evelyn's breath caught for a moment, but then she smiled. Well, he loved ice cream too. He used to say that you could tell a lot about a person by their favorite flavor. What does mint chocolate chip say about you? Emma asked, genuinely curious. He said it meant I was traditional, but with a surprising twist. Evelyn laughed softly, the sound carrying across the water. What about your chocolate ice cream, Nathan? What does that say about you? That I'm boring and predictable? He offered with a grin. No, Emma protested. Daddy picks chocolate because it reminds him of Mommy's favorite cookies. Nathan's ears reddened slightly. Can't keep any secrets with this one around. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the riverbank. Other families began packing up their picnic blankets and fishing gear, heading home for dinner. Emma yawned, leaning against her father's shoulder. We should probably head home too, Nathan said, standing and helping Emma to her feet. Thank you for joining us, Eve. Thank you for letting me, Evelyn replied softly, gathering her purse. She watched as Nathan lifted a sleepy Emma into his arms, her head resting on his shoulder. Good night, Miss Eve, Emma mumbled, already half asleep. Good night, sweet girl. Evelyn touched Emma's hand gently. Good night, Nathan. She stood there watching as Nathan carried Emma to their truck, making sure she was safely buckled in before climbing into the driver's seat. The old pickup's engine rumbled to life, and they drove away, leaving Evelyn alone by the river. Walking to her own car, the modest rental she'd been using, Evelyn's hands trembled as she retrieved her keys. Inside the vehicle, she gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. The simple evening had shaken her more than any board meeting ever had. This man, who had so little, yet gave so much, who spoke of faith with such quiet certainty, who raised his daughter with such gentle wisdom, he had unknowingly started to heal something in her that she thought had died with her husband. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at Emma, the way he listened without judgment, the simple grace with which he faced each day's challenges. Evelyn touched her cheek, surprised to find it wet, with tears. She hadn't cried like this since James died. Not from sadness this time, but from something else entirely, something that both thrilled and terrified her. The morning started like any other at Harper Auto Works. Nathan was elbow deep in an old Chevrolet's engine when Mike, one of his co-workers, burst through the garage door, waving his phone. Cole, you better see this. Mike's usually cheerful face was tight with concern. Nathan wiped his hands on a shop rag and took the offered phone. His stomach dropped as he read the headline on the Maplewood Herald's website. Breaking. Mystery CEO's secret life in small town, the truth behind viral, $5 story. Below is a photo of Evelyn, not Eve Harper, the volunteer, but Evelyn Hart, CEO of Hart Tech Corporation. The image showed her in an expensive business suit, standing at a podium during a corporate event. Beside it was a grainy security camera shot from the diner, the day he'd given her $5. There's more, Mike said quietly, scrolling down. The article painted an ugly picture. Words jumped out at Nathan. Orchestrated viral moment, calculated publicity stunt, and questionable coincidences. The reporter had traced Evelyn's movements, discovering her regular visits to Maplewood coincided with Nathan's sudden job offer and the anonymous donation to Fix It Forward. Nathan's hands trembled. This isn't right, he whispered, but doubt crept into his voice. Mr. Bennett emerged from his office, his face grim. Nathan, you should go home. There are reporters gathering outside. Through the garage's windows, Nathan could see several news vans pulling into the parking lot. Camera crews were already setting up their equipment. I didn't know, Nathan said, his voice hollow. I swear, I had no idea who she was. Mr. Bennett squeezed his shoulder. Go out the back. I'll handle them. Nathan's old pickup seemed to crawl through Maplewood streets. Every stoplight felt like an eternity as his phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls. Local news channels were already running the story. On the radio, a talk show host questioned how a struggling mechanic could possibly have attracted the attention of one of America's most powerful CEOs without ulterior motives. When he reached Emma's school, his daughter was already waiting outside with her principal, Mrs. Thompson. Emma's face lit up at seeing him, then fell as she noticed his expression. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Thompson said softly, we thought it best to call you. Some reporters showed up during recess. Emma clutched her backpack tightly. They were asking weird questions about you and Miss Eve, Daddy. Nathan's protective instincts flared. He scooped Emma into a tight hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. It's okay, sweetie. We're going home. But home offered no refuge. Their modest trailer park had transformed into a media circus. News vans lined the street, and reporters clutched microphones like weapons. Camera flashes exploded as Nathan's truck approached. "Stay inside, Em," he instructed, trying to keep his voice steady. He stepped out to face the barrage. "Mr. Cole, did you orchestrate the viral video? How long have you been working with Evelyn Hart? Was this all a publicity stunt for HeartTech's new charity initiative? What's the nature of your relationship with Miss Hart?" The questions hit him like physical blows. Nathan raised his hands, attempting to shield his face from the cameras. "Please, there's been a misunderstanding. I never knew who she was. Sources say you've been meeting regularly with Miss Hart for weeks. How do you explain the convenient timing of your new job? What about the $100,000 donation?" Through the truck's window, Nathan could see Emma's eyes wide with fear and confusion. That sight steeled his resolve. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring their questions, and made it to his front door. Once inside, he quickly drew all the blinds. Emma stood in the middle of their small living room, tears streaming down her face. "Why are they being so mean, Daddy? You helped Miss Eve when she was sad." "That's what you always tell me to do, help people who are sad." Nathan's heart shattered. He gathered Emma into his arms, sinking onto their worn couch. "Sometimes, sweetheart, people see what they want to see, not what's true." His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages from friends and neighbors filled the screen, some offering support, others expressing disappointment. Local community pages were already filled with speculation and judgment. The Fix It Forward page, once a source of pride, was flooded with negative comments. "Is Miss Eve really a fancy boss lady?" Emma asked between sniffles. Nathan struggled to find the right words. "Seems like she is, honey, but I didn't know that. She was just someone who needed help that day at the diner." Emma wiped her eyes with her sleeve, like when Mommy used to say, "Everyone's the same in God's eyes." A lump formed in Nathan's throat, exactly like that. Outside, the reporters showed no signs of leaving. Their voices carried through the thin walls of the trailer, each question feeling like an accusation. Nathan's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Mr. Bennett. "Take the week off. Let this blow over." But Nathan knew better. In a small town like Maplewood, things didn't just blow over. The trust he'd built, the respect he'd earned through honest work and quiet kindness, it was all being questioned now. Emma's small voice broke through his thoughts. "Can we turn off the phone, Daddy? It's making scary noises." Nathan nodded, powering down his phone. The sudden silence felt both comforting and isolating. He held Emma closer as she cried softly into his shirt, her small shoulders shaking with each sob. Through their living room window, camera flashes continued to light up the growing dusk like silent lightning, illuminating their dark room in harsh, accusing bursts. "I just wanted to help," Nathan whispered, more to himself than to Emma. That's all it ever was. The morning brought more bad news. Nathan stared at his phone, reading yet another email from a sponsor withdrawing their support from Fix It Forward. The words blurred together. "Recent allegations. Pending investigation. Regrettably must suspend our partnership." His hand trembled as he set the phone down on his kitchen table. Emma was still asleep in her room, blissfully unaware of how their world was crumbling. Again. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. 6:47 a.m. Usually, he'd be getting ready for work, but yesterday's phone call from Mr. Bennett changed that too. Administrative leave with pay, pending investigation. The kindness in his boss's voice somehow made it worse. Nathan's phone buzzed again. Evelyn's name lit up the screen, her fifth call since yesterday. He pressed decline and buried his face in his hands. The betrayal cut deep. All those conversations, all that time spent together, and she'd been lying about who she was from the start. The local news station's morning broadcast played quietly on the kitchen TV. "More developments in the viral $5 story scandal," the anchor announced. Sources claim Nathan Cole may have orchestrated the entire incident to attract the attention of HeartTech CEO Evelyn Hart. He switched it off, his stomach churning. The same people who'd praised him last week now looked at him with suspicion. Yesterday at the grocery store, Mrs. Wilson, who'd known him since high school, had quickly turned down another aisle when she saw him coming. The sound of small footsteps made him quickly wipe his eyes. Emma appeared in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, why aren't you dressed for work?" Nathan forced a smile. "Taking a few days off, sweetie. How about some pancakes?" While mixing the batter, 3 text messages arrived from Evelyn. "Please let me explain. None of this is what you think. Just give me 5 minutes." He deleted them all. Emma pushed her pancakes around her plate. Jenny's mom said, "We can't have playdates anymore," she said quietly. "She said you did something bad, but you didn't, right?" The lump in his throat made it hard to speak. "No, honey, I just tried to help someone, that's all." After dropping Emma at school, where other parents deliberately avoided his gaze, Nathan drove aimlessly through town. The Fix It Forward banner still hung at the community center, though someone had spray-painted fraud across it in red letters. His phone kept buzzing. Evelyn again. This time, a text. "I was wrong not to tell you the truth sooner, but my gratitude was real. Your kindness changed my life." Delete. At the diner where it all began, Nathan sat in his truck, staring at the spot where he'd given that $5. A local news van cruised by slowly, and he slumped lower in his seat. The afternoon dragged into evening. Rain began to fall, matching his mood. He found himself driving to Harper Auto Works, using his key to let himself in. The familiar smell of oil and rubber usually brought comfort. Not tonight. In the dark garage, he sat on his rolling stool next to the truck he'd been restoring, his dream of a mobile repair service now seeming foolish and far away. The rain drummed on the metal roof. Lightning flashed, illuminating the tools he'd polished just days ago. His phone lit up with another call from Evelyn. This time, she left a voicemail. Against his better judgment, he played it. "Nathan, I know you're hurt and angry. You have every right to be. But please remember that night at the diner. You gave your last $5 to a stranger, to me, without knowing who I was. That wasn't a lie. That was you, your true heart. Don't let them take that away." He deleted the message, but her words echoed in his mind. The phone buzzed again, a text from his pastor. "Remember Job's faith in the storm. We're here for you, brother." Delete. Another message from a local reporter. "Mr. Cole, we'd like to give you a chance to tell your side." Delete. The rain fell harder. In the darkness of the garage, Nathan bowed his head. His whispered words barely carried over the storm. "Maybe I was a fool to think kindness mattered." The words hung heavy in the air, mixing with the scent of motor oil and broken dreams. His shoulders slumped under the weight of accusations and suspicion. His faith, once so steady, wavering like a candle in the wind. The garage felt bigger, emptier than usual. Tools that had been extensions of his helping hands now seemed like monuments to his naivete. The old truck he'd been restoring sat silent, its half-finished state a perfect mirror of his interrupted dreams. Lightning flashed again, throwing harsh shadows across the walls. In that brief illumination, Nathan caught his reflection in the garage window, a man he barely recognized, worn down, not by honest work this time, but by the crushing weight of misplaced trust and public shame. His phone screen lit up one final time. Emma's face smiled up at him from the background photo, reminding him of simpler days when kindness seemed as natural as breathing. He turned the phone face down, letting darkness claim the garage once more. The rain continued its relentless drumming, nature's own percussion to accompany his crisis of faith. Each drop seemed to echo his devastating thought that perhaps kindness, in the end, was nothing more than a fool's errand in a world too cynical to believe in it. The early morning sun cast long shadows through the garage windows, illuminating dancing dust motes in its pale beams. Nathan sat on an overturned milk crate, staring at the tools laid out before him, tools that had always meant hope, purpose, and honest work. Now they felt heavy in his hands, weighed down by doubt and disappointment. The metallic creak of the garage's side door made him look up. Emma stood there in her favorite purple pajamas, her wild bedhead making her look like a dandelion. In her small hands, she clutched a piece of paper. "Daddy?" Her voice was soft, careful, the way children speak when they sense something's wrong with their parents. "I made you something." Nathan forced a smile, the kind parents wear when they're trying to shield their children from adult worries. "Come here, sweetie." Emma's bare feet padded across the concrete floor, her steps echoing in the empty garage. She held out the paper with both hands, like she was offering something precious. Nathan's breath caught as he looked at the crayon drawing. The picture showed two figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of what appeared to be the diner. Another figure wore ragged clothes, and a bright yellow $5 bill seemed to float between them. Emma had drawn hearts all around the scene, and at the top, in her wobbly handwriting, "My daddy helps people. See?" Emma pointed to the drawing. "That's you giving the money to the lady, and that's me watching." She looked up at him with those earnest brown eyes, her mother's eyes. "Remember what you told me?" Nathan's throat felt tight. "What did I tell you, sweetheart?" You said to always be kind, even when no one's watching. Emma climbed onto his lap, the paper crinkling between them. And you said that kindness is like planting seeds. Sometimes you don't see what grows, but God does. The simplicity of her words, the pure faith in her voice, hit Nathan like a physical force. He wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the warmth of her small body against his chest. "When did you get so wise, huh?" he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. Emma giggled. "I learned from you, silly." Nathan looked at the drawing again, seeing it through new eyes. The figure of himself wasn't drawn as defeated or ashamed. In Emma's vision, he stood, tall, a smile on his crayon face, his hand extended in help. That's how his daughter saw him. Not as the man the newspapers were calling a fraud, but as someone who helped others simply because it was right. He stood up, lifting Emma with him, and walked over to the old Chevy that had been sitting untouched since the scandal broke. Its faded blue paint was dusty, but underneath lay potential, just like everything else in life. "Want to help Daddy work on this car?" he asked, setting her down gently. Emma's face lit up. "Can I hand you the tools?" "You bet." Nathan reached for his toolbox, feeling the familiar weight of purpose return to his movements. "Remember what we always say about broken things? They're just waiting to be fixed," Emma chirped, already reaching for the red rag to wipe down tools. As they worked together, Nathan felt something shift inside him. The hurt was still there, the betrayal still stung, but it no longer felt like an ending. His daughter's simple reminder had rekindled something he'd nearly lost. The understanding that kindness wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about being true to what you believed, even when the whole world doubted. The morning light grew stronger as they worked, father and daughter moving in comfortable sync. Emma handed him tools, asked questions about what each part did, and occasionally broke into spontaneous songs about helping people. Nathan found himself humming along, his hands steady as they brought order to chaos, fixed what was broken. Unknown to them, across the street, Evelyn stood in the shadow of an old oak tree. She watched through tears as Nathan lifted Emma up to peer into the engine compartment, explaining something that made the little girl laugh. The sight of their easy affection, their resilience in the face of the storm she had inadvertently brought into their lives, made her heart ache. She saw how Nathan's shoulders, though tired, still stood straight, how his hands moved with purpose over the engine, teaching rather than hiding. How Emma's presence seemed to give him strength, just as his kindness had once given Evelyn hope when she'd needed it most. The damage her silence had caused weighed heavily on her conscience. The man who had given his last $5 to a stranger, to her, was now paying a far steeper price for that simple act of kindness. Yet, here he was, still teaching his daughter about generosity, still fixing things, still believing. Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling a sob as she watched Emma tape her drawing to the garage wall, right where Nathan could see it while he worked. The simple crayon illustration became a banner of sorts, a reminder that sometimes the purest truth comes from a child's heart. She took a step back, her designer boots crunching on fallen leaves. The sound seemed to echo her guilt. In trying to protect herself, in trying to do good from the shadows, she had cast darkness over the very light she'd meant to preserve. Nathan and Emma's unshakable bond, their quiet dignity in the face of scandal, stood as a testament to everything she'd lost sight of in her corporate world of spreadsheets and shareholders. Through the garage windows, she could see Nathan straightening up, wiping his hands on a rag while Emma danced around him, clearly telling him some story with great animation. Despite everything, he was smiling. Not the broad, easy smile from before, but a gentle one that spoke of hard-won peace. The morning sun caught the chrome of the old Chevy, sending a flash of light across the garage. In that moment, Evelyn knew she couldn't hide anymore. The truth needed to be told, not just for Nathan's sake, but for her own. The question was whether the truth could heal what her silence had broken. The glossy mahogany boardroom tables stretched before Evelyn like a battlefield. 18 faces stared back at her, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed hostility. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hearttech's executive floor, casting long shadows across the plush carpet. Miss Hart, Bernard Wells, the head of the board, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. The stock has dropped 12 points since this situation came to light. He slid a tablet across the table, displaying charts filled with red, downward arrows. Our shareholders are concerned about your recent behavior. Evelyn's fingers traced the edge of her leather portfolio. She'd spent countless hours in this room, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. But today felt different. The weight of her designer suit felt like armor, protecting her from the judgment around her. Behavior? She repeated, her voice steady despite the thunder in her chest. You mean showing basic human kindness? We mean conducting yourself in a manner unbefitting the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Charlotte Myers cut in, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. Living in small-town motels, masquerading as a volunteer, involving yourself with? She paused, lips curling, common mechanics. The dismissive tone when referring to Nathan made Evelyn's jaw clench. She thought of his quiet dignity, his unwavering kindness, despite having so little to give. The board has drafted a statement, Bernard continued, sliding another document forward. It distances you and the company from this Nathan Cole situation. We suggest you take a brief sabbatical while this blows over. Evelyn picked up the statement, scanning its carefully crafted corporate language. Each word felt like a betrayal of everything she'd learned in Maplewood. Hart Tech Corporation regrets any confusion caused by Miss Hart's personal activities. She read aloud, her voice growing harder with each word. We wish to clarify that her actions were undertaken without board approval and do not reflect company values. She placed the paper down with deliberate care, remembering Nathan's words to Emma, "You can lose everything, but never lose the reason you gave." This statement is a lie, she said quietly. Excuse me? Bernard's eyebrows shot up. These actions perfectly reflect what should be our company's values. Evelyn stood, her chair rolling back. I've spent 2 years since David's death running this company on autopilot, chasing profit margins while forgetting why we started Hard Tech in the first place. Evelyn, Charlotte's voice held a warning note. Think carefully about what you're doing. I have thought carefully. For the first time in years, Evelyn walked to the window, looking out at the city sprawling below. Do you know what I saw in Maplewood? Real people struggling with real problems. I saw a man give his last $5 to help someone he thought needed it more. And that someone was me, worth billions on paper, but bankrupt in spirit. She turned back to face the board. I saw a single father working himself to exhaustion to keep his daughter in school. I saw community, faith, and genuine kindness, everything we claim to value in our mission statement, but forgot somewhere between quarterly reports. This is all very touching, Bernard said dryly, but sentiment doesn't pay shareholders. No, Evelyn agreed, but it might save our souls. She reached into her portfolio and withdrew an envelope. This is my resignation as CEO, effective immediately. The room erupted in protests and exclamations. Bernard shot to his feet. You can't be serious. Think of your father's legacy. I am thinking of it. Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos. Dad built this company to help people, not just make money. He would have understood what I learned in Maplewood. She placed her company ID and keys on the table. If integrity cost me everything, it's still a fair price. The board won't accept this, Charlotte declared, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. The board doesn't have to accept it. As majority shareholder, I'm also appointing an interim CEO, James Morton, from our charitable foundation. He understands both business and humanity. Evelyn walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. The statement you're going to release will tell the truth, that I was the woman asking for $5 that day, that Nathan Cole never knew who I was, and that his kindness changed my life. She smiled slightly, and yes, you can quote me on that. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Security guards who had known her for years nodded respectfully as she crossed the lobby. Outside, her driver waited with the car door open. Where to, Miss Hart? Evelyn looked at the tower behind her, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun. For 15 years, it had been her whole world. Now it felt like a beautiful cage she was finally leaving. Maplewood, she said, sliding into the back seat. And James, take the scenic route. I need to make some calls. As the car pulled away from the curb, Evelyn felt lighter than she had in years. The board would be angry. The media would have a field day. The stock might drop further. But for the first time since David's death, she felt truly alive. She pulled out her phone and began composing an email to her PR team. The truth needed to come out, and it needed to come from her. Nathan deserved that much, deserved so much more than what her silence had cost him. The city gradually gave way to suburbs, then to rolling countryside. Evelyn watched the landscape change, thinking about how much she had changed too. She thought about Emma's crayon drawings, about Nathan's quiet strength, about the simple power of kindness freely given. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from board members, executives, and reporters. She ignored them all. There would be time for damage control later. Right now, she had to fix what mattered most. The Welcome to Maplewood sign appeared on the horizon, its faded paint somehow more beautiful than all the gleaming corporate logos she'd left behind. Evelyn touched her window, watching the small town draw closer. Sometimes, she murmured to herself, you have to lose everything to find what you never knew you needed. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of May's diner, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. The breakfast crowd had thinned out, leaving only a few regulars nursing their coffee cups. The familiar scent of bacon and maple syrup hung in the air, a stark contrast to the tension that filled Booth 7. Evelyn sat with her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she watched Nathan's truck pull into the parking lot. Through the window, she saw him sit in his vehicle for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel, before finally stepping out. The bell above the door chimed. Nathan entered, his work boots scuffing against the floor, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. Dark circles ringed his eyes, testifying to sleepless nights. He spotted her and walked over, his movements hesitant. "Thanks for coming," Evelyn said softly as he slid into the booth across from her. Nathan nodded but remained silent. His callous fingers played with the edge of a paper napkin, tearing it slowly into tiny pieces. May, the elderly waitress who'd served this diner for 30 years, approached with her coffee pot. "The usual, Nathan?" "Just coffee, May, thanks." The waitress filled his cup, her concerned gaze shifting between them before she shuffled away, sensing the weight of the moment. Evelyn watched as Nathan added 2 sugars to his coffee, his movements mechanical. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing, heavy with unspoken words. "I owe you the truth," Evelyn finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's blue eyes met hers, tired but steady. Which truth would that be? Evelyn took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around her mug. "Do you remember that cold day, right here at this diner, when a woman asked you for $5? Nathan's hand stilled on his coffee cup. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, followed by confusion. "That was me," Evelyn said quietly. The words hung in the air between them. Nathan's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to something unreadable. He sat completely still, the steam from his untouched coffee curling up between them. "I was that woman," Evelyn continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I'd lost my husband 2 years ago. I was lost. Running a billion-dollar company, but feeling empty inside. I started visiting small towns, trying to understand how real people lived, trying to find something, anything." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, listening. "That day, I wasn't really asking for money. I was testing people's kindness, I suppose. Dozens walked past me. Some sneered. Others ignored me completely." Evelyn's voice cracked. "But you had almost nothing, and you gave anyway." A muscle worked in Nathan's cheek as he stared down at his coffee. "So it was all a test?" "No," Evelyn said quickly, leaning forward. "That's just how it started. But what you did that day, it changed everything. You gave me your last $5 without hesitation, without judgment. You showed me what real kindness looks like." Nathan finally looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "Why didn't you tell me who you were when you came back?" Evelyn's shoulders sagged. "At first, I was ashamed. Here I was, worth millions, playing at being poor while people like you struggled with real problems. Then, when I got to know you and Emma," she paused, blinking back tears. "I was afraid you'd think everything I did was out of pity or guilt. Afraid you wouldn't trust that I'd grown to care about you both genuinely." The diner's ambient sounds filled the silence between them. The clink of dishes, the distant sizzle of the grill, the murmur of other conversations. Outside, a truck rumbled past on the highway. "I never meant for any of this to happen," Evelyn continued. "The media, the accusations, the damage to your reputation, it's killing me. That's why I resigned as CEO this morning. I couldn't keep hiding behind my position while your life was being torn apart." Nathan's eyes widened slightly at this revelation, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup, more for something to hold on to than any desire to drink. "You gave up your company?" he asked, his voice rough. "Some things matter more than money or power," Evelyn replied simply. "You taught me that." Nathan sat back in the booth, running a hand over his face. The morning light caught the silver threading through his dark hair, making him look older than his years. "Emma keeps asking about you," he said finally. "She misses Miss Eve." Evelyn's heart clenched at the mention of Emma. I miss her too, both of you. The clock on the diner wall ticked steadily. A fresh pot of coffee perfumed the air. Outside, the world continued its morning routine, unaware of the revelations unfolding in Booth 7. Nathan drew a deep breath, then slowly released it. His eyes, when they met Evelyn's again, held a mix of understanding and something else, something that made her heart skip. You know, he said quietly, that day, giving away my last $5. It wasn't just about the money. I gave away my last bit of pride too. Admitted I couldn't fix everything on my own. He paused, considering his next words carefully. And now you've given up your last bit of protection, your position, your power. Then I guess we both gave our last bit of something that day, Nathan said softly. At Heart Tech Corporation's gleaming headquarters in downtown Chicago, dozens of reporters crowded into the pristine conference room with its floor-to-ceiling windows and polished marble floors. Camera flashes sparked like lightning across the room as Evelyn Hart approached the mahogany podium. Her usual tailored corporate suits and power jewelry replaced by a simple navy blue blouse and small pearl earrings. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edges of the wooden stand, the familiar weight of authority feeling foreign without her armor of expensive fabrics and designer accessories. But when she spoke into the cluster of microphones, her voice rang clear and strong through the hushed chamber. Thank you all for coming today, she began, her eyes sweeping across the sea of expectant faces, hardened journalists who'd covered corporate scandals, human interest stories, and everything in between. I'm here to tell you a story about $5 and what it taught me about the true meaning of wealth. The room fell silent except for the soft whir of recording equipment. Even the most seasoned reporters, accustomed to corporate spin and carefully crafted statements, leaned forward in their padded leather chairs, sensing something different about this press conference. 2 months ago, I stood outside May's Diner in Maplewood, Ohio, wearing thrift store clothes and asking strangers for money. Surprised murmurs rippled through the crowd like waves. Several reporters exchanged glances, their pens hovering over notepads. I wasn't there as Evelyn Hart, CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I was there as someone trying to understand what it means to have nothing, to be invisible, desperate, forgotten. She took a deep breath, her carefully applied makeup doing little to hide the raw emotion gathering in her eyes. Person after person walked past me that cold evening. Some looked away quickly, pretending they didn't see me. Others muttered awkward excuses about not carrying cash. A few even crossed the street to avoid making eye contact. Then Nathan Cole came along, a single father who just lost his job, a man drowning in medical bills from his late wife's terminal illness. The cameras clicked frantically as Evelyn's professional composure began to waver, revealing the vulnerable woman beneath the corporate exterior. I asked him for $5. $5 measly dollars. What I didn't know, what haunts me still, was that he only had $7 to his name. $7 between him and his 7-year-old daughter in complete destitution. But he gave me that $5 without hesitation, without questions, without expecting anything in return, not even a thank you. Evelyn reached into her pocket with shaking fingers and pulled out a crumpled, well-worn $5 bill. She held it up for the cameras, and the room erupted in more flashes. This is that exact bill. I've carried it in my wallet every single day since then, as a reminder of what true generosity looks like. Not the tax-deductible donations written on corporate checks, but the kind that costs you everything and gives anyway. Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. Nathan Cole didn't know I was a CEO worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He didn't know I was conducting what my board called a social experiment. He didn't know that my company's quarterly profits could have fed his family for decades. He just saw another human being in need and gave what he could, even though it meant he and his daughter might go hungry that night. The reporters scribbled furiously in their notepads, their cynical expressions softening. Several veteran journalists who'd covered wars and disasters and human tragedy found themselves wiping unexpected tears from their eyes. I've spent weeks in Maplewood since then, watching this extraordinary, ordinary man in action. I've seen him fix cars for free when people couldn't pay, using his own money to buy parts for struggling families. I've witnessed him share his lunch with homeless veterans behind the diner. I've watched him teach his daughter that kindness matters more than money, that being rich means having enough to share. Evelyn's voice cracked, and she paused to compose herself. And do you know what he said when someone thanked him for his generosity? We're all broken, just patched up differently. Might as well help each other with the repairs. She straightened her shoulders, her gaze becoming intense as she looked directly into the main camera. The media got it completely wrong. Nathan Cole didn't orchestrate anything. He didn't know who I was. He has no idea about social media strategies or viral marketing campaigns. He's simply a good man who gave his last $5 to help a stranger because that's what good people do. That's the whole story. And it's more beautiful in its simplicity than any conspiracy theory you could imagine. The room erupted with shouted questions, hands waving frantically, but Evelyn raised her hand for silence. The authority in that gesture reminded everyone exactly who they were dealing with. I've learned more about true wealth in these past months than in 20 years of running a Fortune 500 company and sitting on charity boards. True wealth isn't in our bank accounts or stock portfolios or real estate holdings. It's in our capacity to give when we have nothing left to give. She held up the $5 bill again, her voice breaking with emotion. He gave from nothing. That's what makes it everything. Tears now flowed freely down her cheeks, smearing her mascara slightly, but she made no move to wipe them away. Nathan Cole reminded me what it means to be human in a world that often rewards us for forgetting. His act of kindness didn't just help a stranger that day, it started a chain reaction that's changing lives across the country through Fix It Forward, proving that sometimes the smallest gifts create the biggest miracles. 300 miles away in Maplewood, Nathan sat on his worn plaid couch in the narrow living room of their aging trailer, Emma curled against his side like a sleepy kitten. The small television, an old model with a slightly fuzzy picture, showed Evelyn's press conference live. Emma clutched her father's calloused hand as they watched in stunned silence, both of them barely breathing. "That's the nice lady from the garage, Daddy," Emma whispered, pointing at the screen with her free hand. "The one who always asked me about my drawings." Nathan couldn't speak. His throat felt tight as raw emotion crashed over him in waves. Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks as he watched this powerful woman defend his honor before the entire world, tell their story with such tenderness and truth, and reveal the connection he'd never suspected. His daughter reached up with her small, gentle hand and wiped his face. "See, Daddy? I told you being kind always matters," Emma said softly, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. "Mommy always said, kindness comes back to you when you need it most." The tears fell faster as Nathan pulled his daughter closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. On the screen, reporters fired rapid questions at Evelyn about corporate responsibility and wealth inequality, but she remained composed, answering each one with grace and unwavering conviction. The truth of their connection, laid bare for all to see, transformed what had been a painful scandal into something profound and beautiful, a testament to the power of simple human kindness in a complex world. The late afternoon sun filtered through their trailer windows, casting golden rectangles across the worn carpet as father and daughter watched the broadcast together, bearing witness to the moment their small, private act of compassion became a beacon of hope for millions of viewers. Nathan's tears weren't just of relief or vindication. They were tears of recognition and wonder. Seeing his quiet act of faith reflected back at him through Evelyn's heartfelt words, touching hearts and changing minds across the nation, one story at a time. The morning sun painted Maplewood's main street in golden hues as Nathan Cole stood outside his garage, staring at his phone in disbelief. Messages flooded his inbox, donations, volunteer applications, and words of support from across the country. His hands trembled as he scrolled through the numbers. "Dad," Emma called from the doorway, still in her pajamas with cartoon hearts. "Look at the TV." Inside, the local news showed footage of Evelyn's press conference from the previous day, but now with a ticker running beneath it, showing donation amounts climbing by the minute. The Fix It Forward program had gone from a small-town initiative to a national movement overnight. "Is this real?" Nathan whispered, pulling Emma close. A familiar voice answered from behind them. "Very real." Evelyn stood in the garage doorway, holding a stack of papers. Gone was her corporate attire, replaced by jeans and a simple work shirt. The first round of donations totaled over $500,000. People want to help, Nathan. They believe in what you started. Nathan sat heavily in his worn office chair, running a hand through his hair. "I never wanted." "You never wanted attention or money," Evelyn finished softly. "That's exactly why people trust you with both." Throughout the morning, cars began arriving. Not for repairs, but carrying volunteers, local mechanics, retired veterans, high school students, and auto shop classes. They came with tools and willing hands, ready to help however they could. By noon, the parking lot had transformed into an impromptu community center. Someone brought folding tables and chairs. Emma and her friends from school set up a lemonade stand, with all proceeds going to the program. The local diner, the same one where it all began, sent over boxes of sandwiches. "We need to organize this properly," Evelyn said, standing beside Nathan as they watched the growing crowd. She'd rolled up her sleeves, a smudge of grease already on her cheek from helping, with a timing belt replacement. "But first, there's something you should see." She led Nathan to where his old pickup truck sat, the one he'd been slowly fixing between jobs, the dream that had almost died. But now it looked different. Local artists had worked through the morning, transforming the once rusty panels into a canvas of hope. The fresh paint job gleamed in the sunlight, deep blue with silver lettering that read, "Fix it forward, hope in motion." Nathan traced the letters with his fingertips. "It's beautiful," he managed. Emma darted between them, her small hand finding Evelyn's. "See, I told you he'd cry happy tears," she said matter-of-factly. "Just like when you helped pay Mommy's hospital bills." Evelyn knelt down to Emma's level. "Your daddy helped me first, sweetheart. He taught me that kindness matters more than money." "That's 'cause you're our angel friend," Emma declared, hugging her impulsively. Throughout the afternoon, the scene at the garage became something like a festival of compassion. Veterans taught teenagers basic maintenance skills. Single mothers learned how to check their oil and tire pressure. Every fixed car became a lesson shared, knowledge passed forward. Nathan and Evelyn worked side by side under the hood of an elderly woman's car, their movements falling into an easy rhythm. Occasionally, their hands would brush, and they'd share a glance that held more meaning than words could express. "Remember when you first came here, as Eve Harper?" Nathan asked during a quiet moment, both of them wiping grease from their hands. "I thought you were just another volunteer." Evelyn laughed, a real laugh, not the polished sound she'd used in boardrooms. "I was just another volunteer. The best thing I ever did was forget I was Evelyn Hart for a while." The sun was setting when they finally closed the hood on the last car of the day. Volunteers were packing up, promising to return tomorrow. Emma had fallen asleep on a stack of clean shop towels, her face peaceful. Nathan stood before the transformed truck, now a symbol of everything that had changed. The logo caught the last rays of sunlight, seeming to glow with promise. What had started with $5 and an act of faith had grown into something larger than himself. "Still think kindness doesn't matter?" Evelyn asked softly, coming to stand beside him. Nathan shook his head, emotion thick in his throat. "I think it matters more than I ever knew." He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "Thank you, Evelyn. Not for the money or the program, but for showing me that one small act can ripple out farther than we imagine." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "That's the thing about kindness, Nathan. It always comes back to teach us something new." Together they watched as the volunteers' cars pulled away, leaving behind a transformed space that would open again tomorrow. The truck stood ready for its first mobile repair run, a testament to dreams rebuilt and hope renewed. Emma stirred on her makeshift bed, mumbling something about angels and fixing hearts. Nathan and Evelyn shared a knowing look. Some hearts, it seemed, had already been fixed along the way. The logo on the truck caught the last light of day. "Fix it forward, hope in motion." Below it, someone had added in small letters. "Started with $5, built with faith." The autumn morning sparkled with possibility as crowds gathered outside the newly renovated building on Maple Street. The fresh paint gleamed in the sunlight, and a large banner stretched across the entrance read, "Fix it forward, grand opening." Camera crews set up their equipment while townspeople chatted excitedly, their breath visible in the crisp air. Nathan Cole stood just inside the garage, adjusting his tie in the reflection of a polished tool cabinet. He'd insisted on wearing his work uniform, freshly pressed dark blue coveralls, but Evelyn had convinced him to add the tie for the occasion. His weathered hands smoothed the fabric nervously. "You look perfect," Evelyn said softly, appearing beside him in a simple blazer and jeans. Her corporate suits were long forgotten, replaced by clothes that felt more authentic to who she'd become. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dreaming," Nathan admitted, gazing around the spotless garage. 6 lifting bays stretched before them, equipped with state-of-the-art tools. The walls displayed framed photographs of community members helping each other, visual testaments to the ripple effect of kindness. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real." Emma bounced between them, wearing a special junior mechanic uniform that matched her father's. Her dark curls were tied back with a ribbon, and she clutched the ceremonial scissors with both hands. "Can we open it now, Daddy, please?" Nathan chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Soon, sweetheart. We have to wait for everyone to arrive." Through the windows, they could see more people joining the crowd. Veterans in pressed uniforms stood alongside single parents Nathan had helped over the past months. Mr. Bennett, Nathan's former boss, was there too, beaming with pride. Local business owners who'd supported the project mingled with reporters from national networks. "Look," Evelyn pointed discreetly, "the mayor just arrived." Nathan took a deep breath, his hand unconsciously reaching for the folded paper in his pocket, his speech notes. Emma noticed his nervousness and slipped her small hand into his. "Remember what you always tell me, Daddy?" she said. "Just speak from your heart." Evelyn's eyes met Nathan's, and they shared a knowing smile. Emma's wisdom often surprised them both, coming at exactly the right moments. The mayor approached the podium set up outside, and a hush fell over the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed through the speakers, "we're here today to celebrate more than just the opening of a business. We're here to witness what happens when faith meets action, when kindness meets opportunity." As the mayor continued his introduction, Nathan felt Evelyn's hand squeeze his shoulder gently. "Ready?" she whispered. He nodded, straightening his tie one last time. Together, they stepped out into the morning light, Emma between them. The crowd's applause washed over them like a warm wave. Nathan approached the podium, his work boots solid against the wooden platform. The familiar scent of motor oil from the garage behind him gave him strength. This was his element, his calling. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "A few months ago, I stood in this very spot when it was just an empty building. I had $7 in my pocket and a dream that seemed impossible." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "But sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can spark the biggest changes." Emma beamed up at him from her spot beside Evelyn, giving him a thumbs up. Nathan continued, his voice growing stronger. "One act of kindness can spark 1,000 miracles. I know this because I've lived it. What started with $5 and a stranger's request has grown into something bigger than any of us could have imagined." He gestured to the garage behind him. "This isn't just an auto shop. It's a promise to our community that no one has to face their struggles alone." The crowd murmured in agreement. Several people wiped tears from their eyes. "Fix It Forward isn't about fixing cars, though we'll do plenty of that," Nathan smiled. "It's about fixing hope. It's about veterans teaching single parents basic car maintenance. It's about neighbors helping neighbors. It's about remembering that we're all connected, all worthy of kindness." He turned slightly, meeting Evelyn's gaze. "And sometimes that kindness comes back to us in ways we never expected." The warmth in his eyes spoke volumes about their journey from strangers to partners in this venture. Today, as we open these doors, we're not just starting a business. We're continuing a story that belongs to all of us. A story about faith, second chances, and the power of simple human kindness. The applause was immediate and heartfelt. Evelyn stepped forward, joining Nathan at the podium. "Fix It Forward will provide free or low-cost repairs to those in need," she added. "We're also launching apprenticeship programs for at-risk youth and job training for veterans. This is just the beginning." The mayor returned to the microphone, holding up a large red ribbon. "And now, I believe we have a very special young lady who'd like to do the honors." Emma practically skipped forward, her face glowing with excitement. The crowd chuckled warmly as she positioned herself in front of the ribbon, holding the ceremonial scissors carefully. Nathan and Evelyn stood on either side of her, their hands resting lightly on her shoulders. The morning sun caught the metal of the scissors, sending sparkles across Emma's face. "Ready?" Nathan asked his daughter. Emma nodded solemnly, then broke into a wide grin. 1, 2, 3. The scissors sliced through the ribbon with a satisfying snip. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, their joy filling the autumn air. The ribbon fluttered to the ground as Emma threw her arms around her father's waist, and Nathan lifted her up in a big hug. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment. Nathan holding Emma, Evelyn beside them, all three laughing with pure happiness as the doors to Fix It Forward officially opened for the first time. Stars twinkled above the newly opened Fix It Forward garage, their light mingling with the warm glow of string lights that crisscrossed the parking lot. The celebration inside had wound down, leaving behind echoes of laughter and congratulations. Empty paper plates and cake crumbs dotted the folding tables, testament to the community's enthusiasm for this new chapter. Nathan Cole sat on an old wooden bench outside, his work shirt sleeves rolled up despite the evening chill. The garage's new sign cast a gentle glow across his face, highlighting the tired but content smile he wore. His hands, roughened by years of mechanical work, rested on his knees as he gazed up at the night sky. Evelyn Hart emerged from the garage's side door, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She'd changed from her earlier business attire into jeans and a simple sweater, looking more like the Eve Nathan had first known than the CEO she truly was. Her heels had been replaced with comfortable flats that clicked softly against the concrete as she approached. "I thought you might need this," she said, offering him one of the cups. "It's been quite a day." Nathan accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. "Thank you. Sometimes I still can't believe all this is real." Evelyn settled beside him on the bench, leaving just enough space between them to be respectful, but close enough to share warmth. The string lights above cast dancing shadows across their faces as a light breeze stirred the air. "I kept the newspaper," Nathan said suddenly, reaching into his back pocket. He unfolded a worn clipping that showed the viral photo of him giving away his last $5, "to remind myself where this all started." Evelyn's eyes softened as she looked at the image. "I remember how cold that day was," she said quietly. "Not just the weather. Everything felt cold back then." After Sarah passed, Nathan's voice caught slightly on his late wife's name. "I thought I'd lost my way. Every morning was just getting through another day, trying to keep Emma's world from falling apart while mine already had." The coffee steam curled between them as Evelyn listened, her own eyes distant with memories. "When David died," she said, referring to her late husband, "I buried myself in work. Built walls so high, I forgot what it felt like to really connect with people. That day, disguised as a homeless woman, was the first time in 2 years I'd let myself be truly vulnerable." Nathan turned slightly toward her. "Why did you do it?" "The disguise, I needed to understand," Evelyn replied, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "I had all this wealth, all this power, but I felt empty. I wanted to see how real people lived, how they survived. I never expected to find someone who would give their last dollar to a stranger." "You gave me back my faith," Nathan said softly, looking at her directly now. "Not just with the help you've given, but by showing me that kindness really does matter, that it can change lives." The string lights swayed gently above them, creating patterns that danced across their faces. A car passed in the distance, its headlights briefly illuminating the garage's new sign, "Fix It Forward, where kindness meets hope." "You gave me back my heart," Evelyn whispered in response, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so lost in spreadsheets and profit margins, I'd forgotten what it meant to truly care, to see someone give everything they had, asking nothing in return. It woke something in me I thought had died with David." Nathan set his coffee cup down beside the bench. "Emma said something interesting the other day," he shared, a small smile playing at his lips. "She said sometimes angels come disguised as strangers asking for help, but sometimes they come disguised as the people helping us, too." Evelyn laughed softly, though her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Your daughter is wise beyond her years. She gets that from her mother," Nathan said, his voice warm with memory rather than bitter with loss. "Sarah always said that love finds a way to keep giving, even after we're gone." A comfortable silence settled between them as they sat together under the twinkling lights. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves and possibility. In the distance, a train whistle echoed, long and low, like a reminder of how far they'd both traveled to reach this moment. Nathan's hand rested on the bench between them, strong and capable, bearing the honest marks of his work. Evelyn looked at it for a long moment before slowly, deliberately, placing her own hand beside his, their fingers barely touching. The contact was slight but electric, carrying the weight of their shared journey, from that cold day with a $5 bill to this warm evening under the stars. Neither moved to deepen the touch, but neither pulled away either. It was a quiet acknowledgement of something growing between them, as natural and unhurried as the changing seasons. Inside the garage doorway, Emma stood watching, her small figure silhouetted by the interior lights. Her face bore a knowing smile, wise beyond her 7 years. She hugged her stuffed bear closer, watching her father and the woman who had helped change their lives sit together under the string lights, their hands touching in that gentle, promising way. The moment hung suspended in the autumn night, filled with unspoken understanding and the quiet certainty that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the smallest steps. Behind them, the "Fix It Forward" sign continued to glow, a beacon of hope born from one simple act of kindness that had grown into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. The early morning sun crept over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The newly renovated Fix It Forward garage hummed with activity, its freshly painted walls gleaming in the dawn light. The wide bay doors stood open, welcoming the crisp spring air and the promise of a new day. Nathan Cole wiped his hands on a red shop rag as he watched the growing crowd of people filtering into the garage. Tom Baker, a veteran who'd served 2 tours overseas, was already underneath a single mom's minivan, teaching another veteran the finer points of brake repair. Sarah Mitchell, a single mother of 3, worked confidently at the computer desk, scheduling appointments and managing the day's workflow, skills she learned through the program's job training initiative. "Morning, boss." Tom called out from under the van, his voice echoing slightly. "Got Mrs. Jensen's brakes nearly done. Should be good as new in about an hour." Nathan smiled, still not quite used to being called boss. "Great work, Tom. Make sure to double-check that caliper alignment." Emma burst through the side door, her ponytail bouncing with each step. She carried a wooden sign carefully in her small hands, treating it like a precious treasure. "Daddy, is it time to hang it up? Can we do it now?" Nathan knelt beside her, examining the sign he'd spent weeks carving in the evenings after work. The words were deeply etched into rich oak, each letter carefully painted in a warm, golden hue. "One act of kindness can change a lifetime. The $5 story." "Let's wait for everyone to gather round, sweetheart," he said, ruffling her hair. "This is something special we should all share." As if on cue, more people began arriving. Jerry from down the street wheeled in with his toolbox, ready for another day of volunteering. Maria from the diner brought fresh coffee and donuts for everyone, saying it was her way of giving back. The garage was filling with the sounds of conversation, laughter, and the occasional clang of tools. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, dressed casually in jeans and a blue work shirt, her CEO days feeling like a distant memory. She carried a box of newly printed Fix It Forward t-shirts, her face glowing with purpose. "Good morning, everyone. Who's ready for another day of changing lives?" The response was immediate and enthusiastic. These people weren't just colleagues or volunteers. They had become family, brought together by a simple act of kindness that had rippled out to touch countless lives. Before we start today's work, Nathan announced, his voice carrying across the garage, "Emma has something special to share with us all." The bustling activity paused as everyone gathered around. 2 of the veteran mechanics helped Emma carefully position a ladder against the wall near the entrance. Nathan stood behind her, spotting her as she climbed 3 steps up, holding the sign steady. "Careful there, sunshine," he murmured, his hands ready to catch her if needed. Evelyn moved closer, her eyes misting slightly as she watched father and daughter work together. She remembered that cold day when she'd asked for $5, never imagining how that moment would transform so many lives, including her own. Tom and Jerry helped secure the sign to the wall, making sure it was perfectly level. Emma beamed with pride as she descended the ladder, immediately running to Evelyn's side and grabbing her hand. "It's beautiful," Evelyn said softly, squeezing Emma's hand. "Just like your dad's heart." The morning light streamed through the open bay doors, catching the golden letters and making them glow. Everyone stood quietly for a moment, taking in the words and their meaning. Some wiped away tears, others nodded in understanding. They all knew the story now, how a struggling single father's compassion had touched the heart of a lonely CEO, and how together they had built something bigger than themselves. "All right, team," Nathan called out, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's get to work. We've got folks counting on us." The garage burst back into activity, veterans paired with newcomers, sharing knowledge and stories. Single parents learned new skills while their children played safely in the designated kids' corner that Emma had helped design. The sound of tools mixing with laughter created a symphony of hope and purpose. Emma grabbed her pink bicycle from where it leaned against the wall. "Can I ride to Sarah's house? She said I could play with Katie today." Nathan checked his watch and nodded. "Stay on the sidewalk and be back for lunch." "I will," Emma promised, securing her helmet. She hugged Evelyn quickly before heading toward the door. "Love you, Miss Eve." Nathan and Evelyn stood side by side in the doorway, watching as Emma pedaled down the street. Her laughter floated back to them on the morning breeze as she waved to neighbors and called out cheerful greetings. The sight of her, so free and happy, made Nathan's heart swell with gratitude. The sunlight poured through the open bay doors, illuminating the busy workspace behind them. Nathan felt Evelyn's hand slip into his, and he gave it a gentle squeeze. Together, they watched Emma disappear around the corner. Her joy, a testament to the healing power of faith, kindness, and love. The wooden sign above them caught the morning light, Its message a reminder of how one small act of compassion had set in motion a wave of change that continued to ripple outward, touching more lives with each passing day. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Nathan Cole, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.